Hey everyone, Matt here from Proof Fly Fishing. Today we're going to continue our bamboo restoration series by talking about ferrules a little bit. I get a lot of emails about how to fit ferrules, what to do with broken ferrules, how to assess the shape that ferrules are in. And so today what we're going to talk about is the first step is both assessing a ferrule to see if it's any good, if it's still functioning, and then how to remove ferrules in the event that they need to be replaced. In videos that'll come later, we'll talk about sizing ferrules, the different types of ferrules, how to fit them, install them, and how to pin them. But those will be coming soon. But today I want to talk about kind of assessing when a ferrule needs to be replaced and how to get them off if they need to be replaced. So when do you need to replace a ferrule? If you have a rod that has a missing ferrule, so for example it has the female ferrule installed but the male is missing, both the female and the male ferrule at that point will need to be replaced. It's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to successfully pair a new ferrule with an old ferrule. The much simpler, much less frustrating approach is just to replace the pair, because that's how they're generally made to work together. Another instance when you'll need to replace the ferrules is if one is split. You'll see that quite often. They can be split along the length of the ferrule, sometimes the males, sometimes the females. Other times if they just fit way too loose. Sometimes ferrules were fit, I guess, or improperly fit, and you put the two sections together and it just pops off with zero resistance from that ferrule. There are some techniques for tightening the female ferrules, but I have never been able to do that successfully. So if you want to look into that, feel free. I generally just move toward replacing them because it ensures that I'm going to get the fit that I want moving forward. So that's kind of the grounds. Those are the most common issues: split ferrules, missing ferrules, or ferrules that are so loose that they no longer function like they're supposed to. So once you've determined that you need to either replace the ferrules or remove existing ferrules, getting them off can be a little tricky, and it's tricky because there's different ways that ferrules are put on rods. Pretty much all ferrules have some manner of adhesive holding them in place, which if it was just the adhesive, that would be fine. But occasionally you'll find a rod that, in addition to the adhesive, it has a pin that has been inserted through the metal ferrule, through the bamboo, and out the other side. And then that pin has been filed and polished so that it becomes nearly invisible to see. So I'm going to address that in a minute. But let's assume right now that your ferrules do not have pins and you're able to get them off without having to deal with that. So the best approach for getting them off, it's going to be very similar to removing a reel seat. Heat is going to be your best friend here and your best option. I like to use a heat gun. It provides a lot of nice, even, high temperature heat without damaging anything. So what you'll do, this is a rod I just pulled the ferrule off. So I took it outside, and you want to do this outside. You don't know what chemicals were treated on this, or what this metal has been treated with, or what's going on there, and you don't want to take a chance breathing those fumes in once you start to heat it up. So the very first step is to take a razor blade and cut whatever thread or peel off whatever varnish is at the base of that ferrule. You want to expose the base of that ferrule and just clean it up a little bit. That's going to allow it to kind of come free with little or no resistance from the outside. Once you have that kind of all set, what you'll want to do is heat this lower section, probably the bottom half of that ferrule, and you want to get it really hot to the point that if you touched it, it would instantly burn you. And so you're going to want to wear either a pair of gloves, and if you're not going to plan on keeping these ferrules, like with this one I'm not, and if you look close you can see some marks in this ferrule where a pair of pliers were locked onto it, and I use that to kind of assist getting it off. But go ahead and bring it up to temperature. And then if you're not going to keep them, and I generally don't if I'm replacing them, you're just going to apply even pressure, and you're going to just pull that ferrule off very slowly. And sometimes you'll notice they'll come off, it can be difficult, but they'll come off you'll see them just barely move. And then you just have to keep adding heat and keep adding pressure to it. You don't want to twist the ferrule, you want to keep it straight. We don't want to damage the area underneath, and twisting can certainly do that. Another option, and this works really well, is to have a friend hold the rod section with two hands like this while you're on the other side and you're pulling. That way you're not trying to like hold on to this small diameter rod and exerting enough pressure to get that ferrule off. So heat is going to be your number one choice. Give it a couple goes. Sometimes the adhesives that they used back in the day hold on for dear life even under a lot of heat. Most of the time they'll come off with the proper application of heat, patience, and pulling pressure. So that's your number one option. I did have a rod the other day, however, where all the heat in the world did not seem to take that ferrule off, and so I checked for pins. There were no pins in it, and so I had to break out a Dremel tool with a cutting wheel. Now, I'm hesitant to even offer this as an option because you have to be so careful when you do this. Here's the inside of the ferrule, and I'm not sure if you can see that. I'll do a close-up of it in just a minute. But basically, I cut the full length, I cut down the front face of that ferrule, and then I very lightly scored the bottom, and I was able to kind of pry it off the bamboo. If you have to take this approach, take your time. Go extremely slow. What we don't want to do is nick the bamboo or compromise that ferrule station in any way if we can help it. Very light passes, and just kind of like start a little cut and then follow that cut, and the second you see bamboo or what might be bamboo, stop, move to another section, and just keep going very carefully around until you can pull that ferrule off, sometimes in pieces. Another issue you might run into, and there's a surprising number of rods that have pins in them, and they can be difficult to see. This is a rod I built probably 15 years ago, and I pinned these ferrules, and I'll do a close-up of the pin, and maybe it's because I know it's pinned that I can see it. There's a very, very slight, just, I don't know, way the light reflects off it a little bit differently that I can see where the pin is. If I didn't know this rod was pinned, there's a chance that I might miss it. But take a look for a pin. I'll do another close-up of that, and I'll also, this is a ferrule that was pulled off the other day, and I just drilled and put a pin through the tip of it. And I'm going to do a close-up of that too, so you can kind of see what that pin might look like. If you're pulling on it and you're not sure, you think there might be a pin, sometimes they're filed and sanded and polished so perfectly that they blend in seamlessly with the metal on the ferrule. So there is another trick you can use. You can use a chemical. It's called super blue. We carry it on the site. And what it does, what it's doing is it chemically darkens the metal on the ferrule. And you can apply a small amount of this over the area you think there might be a pin. And if there is a pin, keep an eye on it. And chances are the material the pin is made out of and the material the ferrule is made out of have a slightly different alloy. And that difference is going to make one darken faster, or sometimes more or less, than the other. And it'll make that pin stand out a little bit, just enough to see. And once you locate a pin, you can get a very small punch and basically push them through. You don't have to, once you get that punch, you get it started on the back side, you can take a small needle nose pliers and just pull that pin out. They're not glued in place. It's just a mechanical fixture there holding the ferrule in addition to whatever glue was used. So that's kind of the 101 on assessing the quality of existing ferrules and then how to get ferrules off. Again, take your time, make heat your #1 option. If you have to cut it off, go slow and be very careful. In our next video, I'm going to talk about different types of ferrules, how to prepare ferrules for installing, and different considerations through that process. So until next time, thank you.